Good morning. Hey, and welcome to the big room. We made it to the big room finally here. I tell you, I think the next step is my stadium tour. We got a cast of thousands today, or at least there's 14 of us. I'm going to be up on stage today. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to Expo. Nice to see so many people I know and see so many people. I've been talking up this session all week, and it's glad to see that everybody showed up for me. So we're going to start for just a minute with Kyle Bliffert, CEO of Gaia Herbs. They're our sponsor today, and so aligned with a lot of all the values that this industry has, and all the values that are part of the conversation that MBJ keeps trying to have with the industry, and what we're going to talk about, the issues that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to welcome Kyle up to stage. He's going to share a couple of words, and then I'll talk agenda and a few other things.
Thank you, Rick. Good morning. Thank you very much. As Rick said, I'm Kyle Bliffert, the CEO of Gaia Herbs, and we've been in the nutritional supplement and the herbal supplement industry for about 35 years. So very proud to be a sponsor today. The industry is very important. I've been around the industry for decades now, and really pleased to have the opportunity for you to hear from some of the industry's foremost experts who are behind the curtains here. And it occurred to me as I was walking up that, if you could imagine your career or your resume before it started, you would try to build a career like Dr. Jeffrey Bland and some of the other folks you're going to hear from today. So we've got some fantastic experts for you to talk about the supplement industry. We're proud to sponsor. Thank you for your support of Gaia Herbs, and thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Kyle. So we're going to start things a little differently than I normally do. Usually come up here and have a couple of lame jokes, get half a laugh on stage. But, we're at a more somber moment right now in the industry. Last month, I think all of you know, we lost Michael McGuffin, president of the American Herbal Products Association, and, really a warrior for this cause. And of course, I've known Michael since I got into the business, and I'll say I'd planned this outfit of all black like a month or 2 months ago to talk about, something else, which I'll mention in a moment, but, sometimes coincidence isn't a happy coincidence, and here we are here to remember Michael. And like I said, a fierce warrior for the industry, and smart and up to date on all the challenges that they're facing. And really, if you see the way APA, they're looking at the next issue, a psychedelic committee, for instance, a cannabinoid, all up front of all these things. And so that sort of vital, interest and the caring he has for the industry and the people in it. And he and I didn't always agree on the role of trade journalism on this, but we always respected each other. And I'll tell you a story. When we were doing what we used to call the Road to Natural, where we would drive to Expo from some location and explore a theme along the way. And there was a time we drove from Seattle down to Anaheim, and we were exploring natural retail, but we wanted to make the stop, the last one before we got here, at Michael's house in Venice Beach. And it's there where I kind of really got to know him in a lot of ways, because he lives in this house that's kind of reflects his character, a vinyl collection, because what else? And we put on some Bob Dylan, and then we walked across the street. He has a whole garden, and it's that magic of the plant that he was into, that power of the plant. So, like I said, that's when I really got to know him, and our difference of opinion was always there, but always, friendship and respect. And, he wasn't just, like I said, a fierce advocate. He was kind of just a cool guy. And we all lost something last month. The industry lost something, the community lost something. So I want to, let's just have, a moment of silence, a few seconds here, where I want us to think about him, and we're not letting him go, we're always remembering it, but, and living up to the values that he believed in and fought for. Thank you. And I want you to sort of carry it, like I said, think about those goals and beliefs. Now we have a lot to talk about today. I don't know if you've looked at the program, but as I said before, it's a cast of thousands, or at least a cast of 14. A lot of voices on here, a lot of things to share. We're gonna, but before I start, the dark issue came out like, that's all the black. I even have the black rose, and I'll talk about that forever. And I grab you off stage. I want to hear what people thought of it, and where we should take this next. The dark issue is a issue of the NBJ that comes out every year, or not every year, but because we took a break, but where we explore what are the sort of the problems that we're facing, and where are the players that aren't really meeting up to it, and what are the problems we need to solve. So I really encourage you to see the dark issue. If you go to New Hope's site, it's store.newhope.com, I believe. Take a look at it, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. But we have like I said, a big program today. We're going to start with some data from my colleagues, Bill Giebler and Erica Kraft. Erica's the one who puts the numbers together that you're all looking for, and Bill works really closely with that and making sure that they're right. And then we're going to have Scott Dicker, who comes from Spins. I think you all know Scott. He's going to talk about the trends in the industry. Spins has that really close look at what's coming up, what's starting to peak, and they know before anybody what to expect in this industry. They're in the market. After that, I believe it's Tom Arts is going to come up and talk about NBJ Summit, and I think most of you know what NBJ Summit is. It's where we all get together in the summer. In a lot of ways, talking about these issues that I just brought up that are in the dark issue, co-manufacturing, the challenge of GLP-1, and that. After that, we'll have Jeff Bland. Many of you know him and his sort of pioneering work in personalized nutrition. In personalized nutrition, it's sort of had an uneven progression, but there's a lot of things coming together, especially AI, which we had a session on earlier today, that are really going to drive a sort of the next step in that. After that, I'll be back up on stage. So you haven't gotten enough of me already. You're going to get more. And I'm going to be on stage with Jacqueline Jacks, who has a long history there and really knows the science and developments as well as anybody. Tim Avila, who many of you know, who's, again, like what's the next thing? He's always looking at that, just not from like things like personalized, things like the science, what's coming next. And also Noah Voorhees, who if you don't know him, you need to get to know him. Noah's very up on what the business piece, how that comes together as business with some AI and the online outfits. And Noah's one of the smartest people I've met in the last few years. He's going to be on, and after that, we have sort of a recent addition to this. We're going to have people from the Make America Healthy Again movement. It's Maha Action, I believe is the name of it. And that's going to close the show. My colleague Bill Giebler will be back up with that with a panel. So we got a full menu here of stuff to talk about. And right now I'm going to welcome, I believe they're over here, I'm going to have Bill Giebler and Erica come up. And we're going to start, like I said, with that data. That's what we look for in this industry. From NBJ, that's what we're known for. And they're on their way any second here. And there's a lot going on. We're seeing the numbers are changing all the time. And Erica knows them as well as anybody. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, Rick. Thank you,
quick
everyone.
battery change. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. It's so great to be here. It's so great to be in the big room with all this all of you, every one of you. It's exciting to see you. Let's dive right in. We're going to go into, as Rick said, we're going to talk about NBJ's numbers for the industry. I always like to say that NBJ exists as a data entity. Rick talked a bit about the journal. We're a journalistic organization, but we're also a data organization. And the data that NBJ has provided for over a quarter of a century is the what, the where, and the why of dietary supplement of the dietary supplement industry. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through a big market overview. The what? What is the what? The what is the ingredients, the big ingredient categories in the individual ingredients, and delivery formats, unless you want to call that the how. The where is sales channels. Where are consumers buying this stuff? And why are they buying it? Those are the conditions. Are they buying it for brain health or joint health, for immune health or sexual health? So that's what we're going to go through here today. And so we'll start with that big market overview. And over to you, Erica.
Yeah, going to kick things off here with total industry numbers. So for those of you who are a little unfamiliar with how our charts work, so those green bars are going to be our historic sales, and then the gray bars are our forecasted or our predicted sales, and then that yellow line is going to be growth. So left axis is sales, and then the right axis is growth. So just want to bring everyone around to that. So overall, supplement industry growth in 2024 grew about 5.2% to reach $69 billion. What a
With a
significant
B.
amount. Yes, with a B. And so we'll get into a little bit of what's fueling this, but we want to go ahead and start with some consumer survey to kind of like shape where we're at right now. And I like showing this slide because it's really speaking to the overall trend that they talked about yesterday morning of how consumers are really focusing on their preventative health more than they have before, right? So this is pretty much just showing the increase in that preventative health, but as consumers are really looking at the longevity and healthy aging and really prioritizing their health span, so that quality of life over quantity. I mean, if you can get quantity and quality, that's probably really what you'd like, but. So the next slide just kind of hones in that data point a little bit of really showing that consumers are finding balance in their healthcare solutions. So what do we mean by balance? We can see that 39% of general consumers say they use a combination of conventional and natural medicine when they first seek out health solutions. And as we can see that Gen Z and Gen X are really driving this movement. But what I also want to speak to is within this overall, transformation of health is what we're seeing with wearables. So wearables, right, yes, isn't necessarily a new story, right? Apple Watches, Fitbits, they've been around for a really long time. But what is interesting, so we see that 52% of consumers say they're using a wearable, whether it's occasionally or regularly. But what's different now is this consumer empowerment over their own data that they're finding with these wearables. So when we asked, what are consumers really tracking, right, when it comes to these wearables? So, of course, what we see, walking steps per day, as I'm sure many of you, I looked at mine last night, I got 20,000 steps yesterday. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Expo steps don't count.
Yeah, right, that doesn't count. Oh, really? Okay.
No.
All right. But the next one I check is my sleep score. So as we can see, sleep health is up there at the top as well as heart health. And then also I want to take a point here of showing that stress management, almost a third of general consumers are using it to kind of guide and gauge their stress. And so what we're seeing here of what's fueling this movement, so right, if you think about the first generation of consumer wearables, it was steps, it was calorie tracking. But what we're seeing is that Gen Z is really over-indexing on all of the biohacking practices. So the sleep health, the stress management, the brain health, and really kind of using it as their daily mood, if you will. So how does this impact us, right? So purchases influenced by wearable data, we basically just asked, does the data from your wearable, influence any of your purchase making? And we see that 50% of which said that their dietary supplement purchases are affected by this. And this is general consumers. These are not already supplement users. So I thought that was pretty compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Erica.
Yeah.
So that took us into some consumer research. We do a lot of that. And now let's go back into the NBJ model where we're doing that what, where, and how. Let's talk a little bit about the what is selling. Vitamins is still the biggest piece of the pie, over a quarter of the it's the vitamin market. I mean, a lot of people still call it the vitamin aisle. So vitamins are the biggest piece of the pie. Specialty nutrients right behind that. Herbs and botanicals. If you look on the right hand of that slide, you see it from a growth standpoint. Again, it was 5.2% growth for 2024. So anything above that number is really driving the growth for the industry. Sports nutrition is growing at 8.4%, and it's the fourth largest category. High growth and big wedge is very significant. Specialty is growing at 6.3%, and meal supplements are growing at 5.7%. So let's look into those a little bit more. Sports nutrition is functional sports protein beverages and sports supplements like creatine, BCAAs. It's growing fast and it's big, like I already said, and it's we're anticipating adding $3.86 billion to that market between 2024 and 2028. So that's big. That's big growth. Moving on to specialty. Specialty is kind of the catch-all for what's not a vitamin, a mineral, an herb. So we've got collagen, probiotics, omega-3s, melatonin, a lot of things going on that feed the specialty category. And good growth there too, and that's an even bigger absolute dollars, 4.71 billion increase between 2024 and 2028. I think what this points to is a lot more interest in branded ingredients, a lot more interest in good science behind ingredients. You can have a specialty nutrient and not do good science, don't get me wrong, but I just think there's a movement in this direction. So seeing a lot more of these specialty nutrients. And then that third biggest grower was meal replacement. And if anything, we're understating the future here, those gray bars, because depending on the interplay with the Ozempic phenomenon, this is just such a big opportunity. Meal replacement products, giving people the nutrients they need during rapid weight loss. So it's a strong category, 5.7% growth in meal replacement. Oh, I guess I am continuing. It's awkward pause. Delivery format, the how of the industry. Delivery formats is such an interesting thing. It's a pills marketplace. It's all about pills, right? But no, it's not. It's non-pills now have about 65% of the market, and that happened in 2019, where pills were no longer the majority of the marketplace. What is the majority? Footnote: if you combine all the pills, the soft gels, the capsules, the tablets, you do get 35% of the marketplace, so it's still the biggest piece. But when we separate those out, none of them rise above gummies or powders. And liquids is strong in there too, at that number 4, at 12% of the market, and we're seeing a lot of growth in those. And this points to, I think, just more interest in food format type supplementation. So people are interested in that, especially when you look at it from a generational standpoint. Let's look at those yellow bars. Those are tablets, and it's a stair step down from the boomers. Let's say down, going right to left. Boomers loved their tablets. Gen X is okay, millennials, and it's just, still, Gen Z's 41% of them like, or 42% of them like the tablets. But then you look at something else like the liquid, and you've got the stair step in the opposite direction. You've got much more interest among Gen Z and way less interest among baby boomers. So that likely points to where the market's going from a delivery format standpoint.
I also think it's interesting, typically what we saw was Gen Z was like really high in gummies, right, the last couple years, but we're actually starting to see it stabilize between all generations. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah,
maybe
it is.
one to watch.
Yeah, gummies are really here now as just a format for dietary supplements.
Interesting, but all right, we're gonna go ahead and get to some sales channels. So a lot going on within this evolving sales channels market, right? You think about the pandemic 5 years ago and how we've shifted in the last 5 years. In 2022, of course, everything in 2020 had very significant growth. We have some corrections, but in 2022 was the year that mass market was the fastest growing channel, when consumers were really seeking out those economical options. And then we saw e-commerce kind of return back into that top growing market into 2023, and we saw that again in 2024. So what I want to say here with this is natural and specialty continues to lose market share. This is not doom and gloom for natural and specialty. That is not the message we're trying to push. There's actually a decent amount of healthy growth within that, but we track natural and specialty as natural being, the natural retailers as well as independents, but specialty, which is the GNCs, your vitamin shops, which is bringing that growth down a little bit. But Spins, and Scott is going to get into probably the natural a little bit more after us. But like I want to just point out here, e-commerce, fastest growing channel, mass market, practitioner, and then natural and specialty will be one to watch. So just kind of going into a little bit deeper of e-commerce, as you can see, it doesn't look that fantastic in the chart on the right, just kind of showing how total industry is doing and how e-commerce is growing. But there is quite a significant gap. It's just, of course, when you visualize it, it looks a little off, but still doing quite well there. And most of that market is Amazon. So that's really where a lot of that growth is coming from. Mass market, like I said, kind of took that top space in 2022 and is kind of settling down a bit to that 5.2%. And in mass market, will note, these are your in-store retailers like Walmart, Target, as well as your warehouse and club sales. And with that, conditions. This is my favorite part. I think it's probably both of our favorite parts.
Yeah, probably.
Really,
it's kind of where the trends are
Yeah,
happening. And
yeah.
So this is the why.
yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and kick off with some conditions. So I wanna start by just showing where the dollars are, where the dollars are going within these different conditions. So MBJ tracks 22 different conditions. So on the left there is sales within the total market. So as you can see, fitness and energy is the top one. So this is mostly because meal replacements and protein powders have such high sales. And then after that is kind of general health, but then followed by that is weight management, cold, flu, and immunity, gut health, heart health. But then on the right there are our estimates for the fastest growing conditions in 2024. So those would be mood and mental health, menopause, brain health, healthy aging, fitness and energy, and sexual and reproductive health. So we'll get into a little bit of that now.
Kind of in reverse order, working from sort of smaller markets to larger, but the healthy aging is an important one. There's a lot of talk about health span. It was mentioned before on stage. And longevity is such a term. Healthy aging is an interesting category because it's not really, there's not a lot to healthy aging that's not adjacent conditions. When you ask people what they're talking about, well, here, let me talk about the numbers and I'll show you another slide. Big spike in 2020 and from a growth standpoint, and then stabilized, but still strong growth around 8% through the forecast period, looking to add nearly $1 billion. I'm sorry, no, that's 865, that's coming up on $1 billion for the market in 2024. What is healthy aging though? It's immunity, it's digestive health, it's sleep health, it's hair, skin, and nails, and it's muscle health. So it's interesting to see. It's hard to just extract something that is just longevity. Longevity, when you ask consumers what they're concerned about, this is what they're concerned about, and these are all other conditions we track. But we ask these questions through the lens of when you think about healthy aging, what are you thinking about? And here it is from a generational standpoint. Gen Z is definitely interested in longevity, and they're looking at immunity, muscle health, and weight management. When you get to millennials, you add hair, skin, and nails, and gut health, and then Gen X, you get mood and mental health in there too as one of the drivers for healthy aging. Now let's talk about sexual and hormonal and reproductive health. We just released a report. We did a longevity report second half of last year. We did a sexual and reproductive health report just last month, and we got some good fresh data on that. But first of all, it's a big category, and more people are talking about it. And when I say more people are talking about it, I mean more consumers are talking about it. And when I say more consumers are talking about it, I really mean young consumers. It's a big deal for younger consumers, and they're open to talking about it. So we did a survey, again, for this report, and asked consumers, 59% of all consumers said, yeah, I'm experiencing sexual or reproductive health concerns. And then we asked those people, well, first of all, the generational piece on the right, 49%, I'm sorry, the Gen Z, we see yes somewhat and yes a lot. Those are the green and the blue bars. So that's a significant amount of Gen Zers. Of course, more with the millennials. Gen X is pulling back a little, maybe just not talking about it as much. And baby boomers, 83% of baby boomers have no concerns about their sexual health. So good.
None whatsoever.
Good for you, baby boomers. And maybe it's just because you're not having sex.
Exactly.
Yes. But it could be even in an anonymous survey, people are less open to talking about it. So it's just interesting to see. But I think really the Gen Z and millennial piece is what's interesting here. Looking at a couple products. These are not endorsements. We just look at products that represent the marketplace. And it's kind of moving from like that nitro wood on the left products aimed at males with a very singular focus. And then moving toward the right there with a little more sophistication and more of a female target in sexual health. And there's so much opportunity there in female sexual health. And then an interesting company to watch, Hello Cake, was on stage. My colleague Rob and Lawrence had a wonderful panel the other day. Hello Cake's a very interesting company. They started in toys and lubes, and then they moved into supplements, and now they do pharma. And so it's a very diversified model, and I think we're going to see more of that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's encouraging, when we break out that market, right, we see that, majority of it is male-focused products, right, but we're starting to see the shift into women's, and really where most of the growth is within women's sexual health, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that category evolves. But weird transition, but let's get into gut health. So as talking about gut health, we also just released a gut health report last week, so this is also fresh data for you all this morning. And I really like this condition because I kind of relate it to healthy aging, where it's like kind of gut and everything axis. Healthy aging is, like you said, immunity, bone, muscle, and gut is gut and brain axis, gut skin axis, and then there's the mood piece, there's weight management. So it's really, really interesting here, and I think there's a lot of innovation in this space, as well as the increased consumer awareness of all these different systems working together. So 5.8% growth in 2024, going to be onwards and upwards to about 7 to 8% into 2027, 2028. So, okay, I was going to ask a poll before I did that.
Oh, wait, no, don't look.
No, it's too late. They
All
already
right,
saw it. They already saw it. So anyways, we're having an internal debate. Bill and I have many internal debates, so we just want to bring it to you all. And we thought it was interesting that, just go ahead, good.
Just go ahead and show it.
It's fine. It's fine. So anyway, so what we saw, we surveyed about 7,000 consumers and asked, are you optimizing your gut health? And if you are you doing it for overall health, or are you doing it for gastrointestinal related concerns, right? So think IBS, cramps, bloating, et cetera. So more consumers were doing it for overall health optimization rather than gut health. Does that surprise?
We call them the optimizers
Yes.
and the belly achers.
Yes. Does that surprise anyone? Just raise your hand if that's surprising to you.
Okay, well, thank you.
You have about
I'll
20
buy you a
people
coffee
that-
later. Erica likes to put this debate out there because I lost.
Yes.
I thought more people were working on their gut health because of their digestive issues.
Yeah. But I think that speaks to the overall trend in this category, because you've been in the industry much longer than me, and I think that's what this category was built on. Mm-hmm. And now we're starting to see this trend more into the awareness of how the gut can affect your overall health. So just an interesting data point there. And then we asked, what are your top motivators for your gut health optimization? So these are the optimizers, as we called them. And so, of course, overall gut health, immunity, digestive health comes to the top. But what's interesting that I want to point out is the weight management and skin health piece. I think those are really two interesting categories that we're going to see a lot of interest and innovation for in the next couple years. And in the next slide here, what we can see is we put some, again, not sponsored products. These are just products that we feel are really showing, the innovation and the trend within this space. So really you see that Skin Squad, the pre-probiotic on the left there really is like a big Gen Z millennial brand there. And then all the way on the right, you see that really targeted product for leaky gut syndrome. And we can't have a supplement session without talking about GLP-1s. So we're going to go ahead and end on this, I believe. So weight management, right? It's a big topic of conversation. Definitely a category poised for high growth now and into the market there. So what we see here is that it's fueled by those meal supplements, the probiotics, the fibers, the symbiotics as well. And so what we're seeing is about 6 to 7% growth into the future there. And another slide we like showing is just kind of, when we did this, we also did this report late in 2024 of supplements in the Ozempic age. And Rick did a really great job of kind of categorizing consumers into these different buckets of, the before or the instead of. So those who maybe want a more natural solution or, just don't want to be on a GLP-1 but do want to lose some weight. And so what's interesting here is, having those supplements that can kind of help those who are in that bucket. And then also the products that are geared more towards those who need those nutritional needs while they're on the medication. But as you can see, there's some ingredients to note there, a lot of growth within combination herbs and probiotics. And these are just some of the reports that we mentioned here this morning. So just some nice lovely pictures to talk about, but there's a lot going on.
There
It's
is a lot
exciting.
going on, yeah, and there's a lot going on this stage, so I think let's move off of it. Yeah, those are the reports. Go ahead and scan that code. Yeah,
We'll be around
I'll
if
be
you guys
back in
want to
about an
ask
hour with a
questions
panel.
too. Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Erica.
Thanks.
Fantastic. So I'm here to give the spin state of the industry for the supplement space. Real quick, I always like to do that in these rooms. How many people have traveled with their supplements today? To here? All right. So we're in the right room. It's not just people wanting to take a seat off the show floor. It's really interesting what's going on. This is me. I'm going to go over the market overview, some of the category performance, some of the functional ingredients. That's the number one thing I'm always asked. What are the trending functional ingredients? Go over a few key categories, mood support, active nutrition, and then end in some of the things that I'm looking out for. Real quick, I have a lot of data to get through, a lot of insights. Are you guys all familiar with spins? Yeah? All right, so we don't have to go through this. The one thing that I do want to note, how many finished brands out there? Sorry, I'm making you raise your hands all the time. Brands that work with us grow 22% faster than brands that don't. There's a soft pitch. We have a very big booth. You guys should stop by. The data that we're sharing today, so we get data from exclusive partners in the natural channel, as well as specialty retailers. We are the only ones who have access to, we have exclusive relationships with both GNC and Vitamin Shoppe, very relevant for you guys. But for today, I'm going to give you a large overview. So it's going to be conventional, plus natural channel, plus Amazon. If we had an hour, we'd go into them individually, but I think it's beneficial to kind of do the market as a whole. And so let's get to it. Supplements are doing well in every channel. It's very good. What's really interesting is that prices are stabilizing, so there's been a little more volatility over the past few years. But as you can see, especially even in the natural channel, which is growing 4% in dollars, higher in units, prices are even declining. I will send out these slides as we go forward. So taking a look at what categories, when I looked at this mid-year, I thought that this might be the first year in a long time that active nutrition was not the top growth category. It was when we looked at the end of the year. So performance nutrition continues to be the key driver. You see both in performance nutrition as well as protein, which is related to it, and also vitamins and minerals doing well. A lot of that buoyed by really strong magnesium sales. When you look at some of the key themes, hydration, has anyone walked the floor yet and not seen a hydration product? No? I think every booth has one. So doing well, calm, minerals, and then on the other side, you look at what's kind of declining. It's interesting because you have energy supplements are declining. Those are specific ones, whereas things like, we'll get into pre-workouts, that's a different story, but energy drinks, so you see some of that transferring. Weight management, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but you see that category is declining. Obviously, that the interest in weight management as a whole is there. We're going to talk about what that means as well. Those are subcategories. Here is the health focuses, hydration. Again, this is what's buoying a lot of the sales there. Mood support, immune health. And this is actually the slide that I wanted to do this on. So you see sleep as a health focus declining, but mood support increasing. So that's where a lot of it's going. People are making that connection where kind of if I de-stress, it'll help me sleep. So there's this more holistic overall wellness view of it. Same thing, cold and flu declining, immune health doing really well. So you see some of these are just shifting, even these kind of health focuses that are declining. The interest isn't there, it's just kind of shifting as we're finding products being positioned slightly different. Keeping on going. So here it is. So key functional ingredients, everyone always asks me for. And whenever anyone asks me what the key functional ingredient of the year is going to be, they always expect it to be a new and novel ingredient, and it is always an established ingredient that found a new demographic or new health focus. And so some of the ones that we've seen in the recent years, ashwagandha, been around forever. Creatine is doing extraordinarily well. We'll get into that. Magnesium, a great example is beetroot as well. So an established ingredient for a long time in the active nutrition space as a vasodilator. has really been repositioned as a cardiovascular support, blood pressure support product, doing really well. A few of the others I'm keeping an eye on. That Mushrooms Other is mostly lion's mane as focus, and nootropics are becoming big. Colostrum is doing incredibly well. ZMAs it's a small area. I think it's going to do pretty well in the future, so I'm keeping my eye out for that as well. One of the things to always look at is what's doing well in the natural channel that has not crossed over to conventional yet. And so these are products that have at least 70% of their brick and mortar sales in the natural channel. And so these are ones that have the potential to be that next explosive growth if they get mass market penetration. So colostrum, algae, glutathione, oregano, these are ingredients that you should be watching for. If they start to penetrate that mass market, they can have really explosive growth. Delivery method, Bill and Erica did a good job of it. I just wanted to show you the difference in channel. So a lot of times products are made for channels specifically, and what does well in one channel will not necessarily do well in another. So for example, brick and mortar does really well with ready-to-drinks and powders, and Amazon does really well with a few of the others. Just so you guys know, because everyone asked me, gummy is 7th on Amazon, but growing at 21%. Anyone make gummies out there? Yep. Yeah. Mood support. Some of the things that we've been watching out for in the past couple of years, and we presented on it, is this idea that people are cutting back on alcohol, but they're looking for something to replace it that still gives them that special feeling. And so what ingredients are doing well? We're tracking that. This is in supplements, but this also has an opportunity to spill over into beverages. So there's a lot of mood support beverages out there. The problem is a lot of that acute feeling. But you're seeing ashwagandha, THC is one to really keep an eye out for. Theanine's doing really well as well. And then on the flip side, the same people who are going to pull back on alcohol are likely to start to pull back on caffeine next. So some of the ingredients, paraxanthine's an interesting one that I've been watching for years, doing well. I actually, on the show floor, I saw nicotine pouches here for the first time, which was very interesting. As that continues, that's something interesting to watch. The Sleepy Girl mocktail, this was something popular. So we saw mood, and I just highlight this to show you the continued blurring between supplements and food and beverage products. If there is a line anymore, it's very, very gray. If you look at all the functional beverages out there, it'll probably be 50-50 if you turn around if there's a supplement facts panel or a nutrition facts panel. But people are making the connection to what can be utilized from the supplements into food and beverage. So the ingredients that really make it, they start out in supplements and they kind of transition to functional beverages. And then the ones that really make it, you'll see them in granola and pancakes and everything else like that. When we go to active nutrition next, you see a lot of this is buoyed. So this was, again, for the 4th year in a row, this was the fastest growing supplement category. It was really buoyed by hydration and creatine. This was the first year in a long time that pre-workouts actually were declining. A lot of that was a shift to energy drinks. When we talk about protein, a big shift that you've seen over the past few years is the shift back to whey protein. So similar to how, when we saw that plant-based meat boom, we saw plant-based protein booming with it. As that sort of leveled off, we saw plant protein level off as well, people going back to whey protein. So that's the highest market share and the highest growth. I do want to note that for plant protein, pea protein is still growing at almost 10%. Protein is at almost a 50% household penetration and has a 75% repurchase rate. So it's a really sticky category. And performance nutrition in general is actually the three top least seasonal categories in supplements are all performance nutrition. So pre-workouts, protein, and supplements, performance other. So if any retailers are out there, these are categories that you really don't have to pay much attention to. There's some social media trends going on. It's 30 grams of protein per meal, 30 grams of fiber a day, and 3 probiotic foods. So this kind of shows that protein has this continued health halo. Fiber is really approaching that. It really helps as fiber's been kind of rebranded as prebiotics, and really finding a lot of growth there. And it's especially impressive as there's competition in every single aisle. So not just aisles of the grocery store, but also aisles on the show floor. You'll see protein added to everything, and fiber as well. When we talk about creatine, creatine's been an exciting ingredient. There has never been an ingredient that was really more niche, hyper-focused on young men, particularly young men in the gym. And it's really expanded into having all these different growth runways. So you see format changes. Creatine gummies are doing well. The creatine ready-to drinks are entering the market. And so as we look for I mentioned before, when you look for the ingredient that's going to take off, it's an established ingredient that takes new forms, check, new demographics, women, different age brackets are entering, new health focuses, it's being used for cognitive support now. And now even, the one that I hadn't thought about before, is now they want the people who are using it to actually take more creatine for those cognitive benefits. So there's a new study that came out, or at least that I learned about, that when you take a large dose of creatine, it helps you have more energy when you're sleep deprived, AKA at Expo. When you talk about sports and rehydration drinks, this is an interesting thing because this saw a big boom over the past few years with a couple big brands. We're seeing that flattening out, although the supplements and the stick packs in particular are seeing really massive growth. One thing I want to highlight is a lot of these active brands that have become active beverage brands have really, made the hydration and energy kind of their thing and moving between ready to drink and ready to mix. So like Celsius, for example, came out with ready to mix hydration. So this is kind of an example. We've seen it go the other way as well. What's next? We see different formats. We see drops. We see gummies. I always say, if you're thinking about hydrating, removing the water is an interesting option, but people are interested in it. Hydration has such a health halo that now it's the hero health focus. So it's not something plus hydration. It's now hydration plus immunity plus energy. Even hydration plus protein is out there, where protein's always the halo, the health halo. And nature's hydration, so don't forget about some of these juices as well. So energy is the opposite. So we see the supplements, the ready-to-mix versions of it, slightly declining, but a lot of that growth is coming back in energy drinks. I want to take this time out to say that, to really mention that we are tracking all these artificial ingredients, the single ingredients as well as artificial ingredients in general. There's always been this kind of double standard for some of these sports nutrition products where because they were kind of perceived as good for you, a lot of them had a ton of those artificial sweeteners, colors, everything in there. But you see here there's big opportunity and growth when you have them naturally positioned, and a lot of that means kind of that clean label. Excuse me. And so finally, I want to go through some of the things that I'm looking out for. There's going to be a whole panel on this, but it'd be hard to do a state of industry without talking about the likely impact of GLP-1 drugs. It's going to impact every single aisle in the store, supplements in particular. So I mentioned that weight loss supplements were down. They had been declining at mid to high single digits for a few years. This was low double digits now. But what's going to take its place is, I think there's two sections. So there's companion products. So things like protein to make sure as you're losing this weight, you're not losing your muscle mass. I predict that we're going to see the best year for multivitamins in a long time as people look to fill those nutrient gaps, as well as things like green supplements and gut health products to kind of mitigate some of those reported side effects. And then there's also the competitor products. So I did this slide a few years ago. I thought I would never have to do it again. We talked about berberine, how it started to pop as being dubbed nature's Ozempic on a lot of popular podcasts. But now I have to keep re-updating it because it keeps hitting new peaks every quad. And so it's very interesting to see that there is still a demand for these types of products that are being purported to mimic versus companion. You see there's other ones out there as well. So it's kind of these competitor versus companion products, that there's a market for both. Other things I'm looking out for, Erica and Bill mentioned how this wearables boom. So this is how we're talking about personalization coming to market. So how many people are wearing a wearable right now? Whoop, Oura Ring, yep. So you're getting your personal data, and you're able to make real-time changes and see what they happen. And the number one thing people change is the supplements they buy. And the number two thing that they do is diet modification. Factor that in, a lot of people now are also kind of gamifying it, finding out their biological age. Anyone do that? A lot of people. Anyone brave enough to say that they're actually older than their chronological age? Nope, never met anyone yet. I'll keep trying though. And so where the opportunity is now there's this feedback loop that's going to happen where there's going to be recommendations for what products to take. So how can your brand be in that recommendation is something that you really need to start to think about. Which takes me to the last point, this kind of evolution of search. We started out, people would Google the products, then they were checking the Amazon reviews, and now they're both looking on social media as well as some of these AI chatbots and like the GPT style searches. Just for example, we asked, and anyone could do this, we asked the different GPT chatbots what was the best creatine. And we got very different answers across the board from the different ones. Only Transparent Labs and Optimum Nutrition came in up in all three. So as you're thinking about your marketing and where you're spending your marketing dollars, this is where kind of the future is for how people are finding it. You need to start thinking about how to optimize getting your product to be the recommended one. And so thank you guys very much. I really enjoyed presenting to you guys. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom Arts. Tom, do you need this? Tom, do you need this? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. How are you today? Are you enjoying the session? Is that too much data for you? I think the important thing is the wisdom that comes out of the data, and I love data. My whole career has been in data. My name is Tom Arts, and I'm the co-founder of MBJ and MBJ Summit, and also Nutrition Capital Network. But they still keep me around, so I get to give two jobs today. One is to introduce one of our events coming up, the MBJ Summit, and the other is to introduce our next session and our featured speaker that you all are going to be very happy that you stayed here to listen to. One of the legends in our industry is going to be interviewed by Jessica. So let me start with the summit, which is coming up. And by the way, I'm biologically 53.5, and I'm not going to say my chronological age. So, but I feel like I'm 45. So it's all about supplements, which I take a lot of. But I think our event coming up is the MBJ Summit. We started this back in 1998. We're on our 28th year. This takes place, I'm sorry for the brash commercial here, but I want all of you in the supplement community to know that this is where a lot of the CEOs come, C-level executives come and gather at the end of July at the Terranea Resort right out of LAX. It's kind of like 25 minutes from LA. We have three amazing keynote speakers, maybe a fourth one coming up. Dr. Callie Means, who you're going to hear from later today, who's involved with a lot of things going on at our highest government levels with Bobby Kennedy Jr. and HHS. We have Brian Kennedy, who's a world-renowned speaker on longevity. And we have Ben Greenfield, who's one of the leading biohackers. How many of you have heard of Ben Greenfield? He's pretty up on podcasts, and he's a big influencer. So we're going to do something on our last day of the summit this year for the first time. We're going to get into some biohacking discussions, and we're even going to have some biohacking experiences for our CEOs. We're going to have cold plunges and things come in. So it's going to be really exciting, which is all connected to supplements and all connected to our wonderful industry. So we'll have these topics: longevity, biohacking. We're going to talk about AI. I don't know if you heard the AI presentation. We're going to try to continue that discussion because it's in everybody's mind. And then we'll talk about what's going on at the highest levels of government. Was it good? Is it bad? What's the good, the bad, the ugly of that? Because there's certainly some unintended consequences that probably need to be discussed. And then we'll get into women's health and brain health. So that's our summit. Hope you can make it. It's for C-level executives. If you need an invitation, just talk to Jessica Rubino or myself or Bill Giebler or Molly, who's in the audience somewhere. She's raising her hand. She has the invitations. So thank you. With that, I'd like to take the final few seconds here to introduce our next session. I'm really honored to still be involved in this State of the Industry. I used to give this many years ago, but they've done a great job. Really used to be just me and a couple other people, but now we've got a plethora of wonderful speakers. Our next panel session is going to be with Jessica Rubino, who's the Director of Content and Summits. She's was here yesterday facilitating the entire State of Natural. So she's also the co-chair of the summit, and she's a big leader at New Hope and Informa, and has done a great job. And she's going to interview Dr. Jeffrey Bland. So let me take a minute and just introduce Jeff. How many of you have heard of Jeff Bland? Okay, so those of you that have may have heard of, how have you heard him speak before? So he's not going to give a long speech. He's going to have a discussion today, which is really amazing. He's considered the father of functional medicine in our industry, which is really going to change medicine as we know it. He's sort of behind the transformation of what's happening at healthcare at the highest levels. He was the co-founder of Metagenics, one of the top supplement companies in our sector. And now, since he can't retire just like me, he's launched another company called Big Bold Health, which is really taking immunity to the next level. Jeff is truly one of the great leaders in our space. He's one of the smartest people. He's also a good friend, and he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. He's always giving back, and he's one of the smartest guys in this sector. So let's give a big round of applause for Jessica Rubino and Jeffrey Bland. Have a great rest of the show. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. You want to take this chair over here? Thanks, Jeff. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all out there. I'm so fortunate I get the opportunity to interview such a legend. And we've had so many chats leading up to this. We're like, how can we just talk for 15 minutes? Oh my gosh. So let's jump in.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
No time to waste. Exactly. Well, Tom did such a great introduction that really represented the scope of your work and how long you've been doing this. And one of the things, even though many of us are in black, it's such a bright time for human health and dietary supplements. And you've talked about this time as being a really transformational period. And the fifth phase is the term you've used of dietary supplements. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, first of all, Jessica, what you've done here is nothing short of brilliant. I was so energized by your opening presentation yesterday. And I think you set the context for what we all really need, some kind of emotional bonding, some kind of collegial understanding that we have shared common values about survivability and about the future and about legacy. And it's a real privilege to be with you here on the stage this afternoon with this group. So for me, it goes back obviously 50 years. I've been at since Expo 1. Doug Green and I actually worked on the development of the education programs for the first Expo. So I've been able to watch this industry now, community, grow up. And I think we're in a really interesting phase because with regard to the vitamin supplement sector of this industry, it's been through what I call 4 kind of preparatory phases. And the first was filling a gap. That's where it started. In bad American diet, you have nutrition gaps, so you fill that with supplements. Then the next phase was really vitamin C and the common cold. Linus Pauling built this whole concept then that we should be taking higher doses of certain nutrients to promote certain kinds of health. And so the vitamin C revolution really birthed the dietary supplement industry. That's phase 2. Phase 3 then is we went into a phase where people started to say, hey, you know, these supplements that we're using cut across more than just vitamins and minerals. There are all these other accessory nutrients, and I recall in 1982 I did a kind of a media tour around essential fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids. This was during the Pritikin era. It was pretty hard to sell people on fat when we were in the low-fat communities in the early 80s. And then from there we moved into this next phase, phase 4, which was the nutrigenomic period, where people started to look at individualization, the whole portfolio of different supplements with different clinical conditions, felt states, and started to see how we could improve functional outcome in individuals. And now we're in stage 5. And stage 5 to me is extraordinarily empowering. In fact, I'm still so appreciative of being involved with this field still at stage 5, because stage 5, I call it the epigenomics era, in which we start to, for the first time with good science and no dispute, recognize that nutrients can imprint the cells of even older age individuals in such a way as to regulate how their genes express themselves. So we're not locked into the bad news of just the way the sperm met the egg in the original set of our gene book of life, that we are actually able to modulate how that gets expressed by the things that we do every day. And part of that are the nutrients that we're exposed to and how they influence in genes that are going to regulate our function. And you know, for us, my focus right now is on the immune system, because it turns out that the immune system turns over about every 120 days. So the question is, will the cells 120 days from now be as good, worse, or better than the ones they're replacing? And we have that opportunity every 120 days to kind of send messages to our immune system that we want our cells not to be senescent in age, but to be young and vital. How do we do that? That's the new discoveries in the field of immunonutrition, immunosenescence, and immunorejuvenation. That's where we're focusing, because it's an upstream message for the downstream influences of the whole body.
It's so amazing how you articulate those different phases and how they each have built on one another. I know so many of us say, like, so much has happened over the past, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but you've distilled that into these really critical chapters for the supplement industry. And you talked about the individual and how not the final chapter, but the fifth chapter, the fifth phase that we're in, is really about understanding the individual. And so much of your work has been around personalization before anyone was even talking about that. So where do you see personalized health solutions going?
Yeah, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, because for years, people who have come to my education programs have said, Jeff, you have this kind of enlightened view of where the future might be, but we're not really to the future. We're still in a different phase, because we can't scale this idea. We can't scale personalization. It's too much time, N of 1, to do the individual treatment. So we're still in kind of the massification model, which is really public health and community studies and the way the drugs are done. The way drugs are developed are around population statistics.
Yeah.
So then we look at a group of people with a specific diagnosis. We then develop a new to nature molecule that influences that condition, and then we look at a broad range of people, soup to nuts, and then we see what outcome we have, and is it safe enough that people won't kill themselves taking it, and we do it, and we call it the medicine for the average. But then we find out that actually the population of people that need those medicines are not average. They're all uniquely different. And there has been the kind of the problem of what we call adverse drug reactions, or, for instance, some of the major drugs, let me use the TNF-alpha blocking agents for autoimmune diseases. People are not aware that the number to treat to get a positive outcome from these drugs that cost $30,000, $40,000 a year, the number to treat of over every 100 people you treat, only about 30 of those 100 people have positive outcomes. So you might say, well, hold it just a minute. How can you approve a drug that only works in 30% of the people for which it's diagnosed? Because those people that do respond very well. So it weighs the statistics enough to get you over the P05 level of evidentiary support. Now that's a different kind of healthcare than we're talking about. One at a time, each individual. How does you maximize and optimize that ability of that person to function? And now we're at a point in our history where we actually have the tools to scale this. Here I am with my Oura Ring and my Apple Watch, and I'm 24/7, 365 learning about my body, the first human race that ever had that ability. That all goes up to the cloud. It comes back to me in some information that guides me about intelligent decision making. What we're going to be seeing is this whole informatic revolution, this whole AI revolution is going to take this vital information, it's going to recast it in ways that we don't have to become physiologists or anatomists, but we can benefit from that information coming back to direct us as to how to personalize. That's scalable. That's the force of change that this industry is going to realize over the next few years.
What needs to happen in order for it to be truly democratized? That's a question and you talked about scalability, like how do we take that from, and as we saw yesterday, a large quantity of people are using wearables and understanding their personal health, but it isn't quite there in terms of everyone using it. What needs to happen, and how can this industry help?
Yeah, so this is another conversation I've had with many, many people over the years. As you might imagine, a great portion of my life is my leg and my intellect is over here in the traditional medical world. And so I get all these questions, these like I'm the critic, I'm critically reviewed. And so they would say something like, so are we talking about like 100 years from now that this transition is going to occur? And so I bring up to them things that are obvious that often we take for granted. Like in 1982, I built an Altec computer as a hobby. It was the first microcomputer. It was the predecessor to Steve Jobs and Wozniak building the first Apple computers. And when I would talk about this, I recall my son at the time was in the 5th grade, and we did a little program for a science project for him, and it was like really magic that you could use this computing power to do some statistics. But no one ever thought they were going to need a computer. In 1982, well, that's just for geeks. Now, we can't imagine a world today, right? Everything we do is controlled by chips. And so this construct that, you know, if you can imagine it can happen, is really an important thing right now, because we're in a revolutionary time of exponential growth in how these concepts get incorporated. I mean, just look at AI alone. And now I'm running, you know, a friend of mine said, Jeff, are you using just one AI program? I said, well, yeah, I'm just learning how to use that as a tool. He said, oh, well, that's like primitive. He said, you need to take the answer from one AI program and run it through a second AI program, take the answer from that and run it through a third AI program, which is what I'm doing. And now we have this iterative body of knowledge that when you finally get something coming out the other side, it represents trillions of data points upon which you're going to be making a more informed understanding. So all these things are happening in real time. And what I think this industry is starting to recognize is that we can marry the beauty of the natural world, the mystery of nature. You know, it's why we're into rock regenerative agriculture with our Himalayan Tartary buckwheat now, is because we want our hand in the soil. We want to understand the soil microbiome. We want to understand that how it influences the through line of a healthy planet, healthy soil, healthy plant, healthy animal, healthy us. But all those things are interconnected. And now we have the tools actually to be able to put those things together into comprehensive strategies that deliver improved value without giving over the reason that this industry has been birthed some 50 years ago.
So in terms of those comprehensive strategies and what people actually do with the data, we're seeing so much more blending of pharmaceutical worlds, dietary supplement, and food and beverage. What do you see as next for this sort of intersection of all of those industries?
So let's look at GLP-1, right? That's on the top of everyone's mindset right now. So we published our first research paper on GLP-1 22 years ago. I can't believe it when I think back how quickly time's gone by. And we kind of brought to our practitioner world the concept of introendocrine hormones. Everybody goes, what's an introendocrine hormone? And we started talking about the fact that the GI mucosa is lined with antennae that are receptors that pick up information from our diet and signal them the release into the blood of these hormones that are members of that family. GLP-1 is only one. GIP is another. Somatostatin. I mean, I could go through the list. Let's just say there are a whole variety of these hormones that are produced by the signal from our diet that's picked up by the gut and then produces these responsive hormones, of which GLP-1 is one. And it turns out for GLP-1, it's the L cells in the distal ileum in the small intestine that has the receptor, the antennae, on the surface of that cell to pick up information from the diet. And what are the information molecules in the diet to do this? They're bitter tastins. Bitter tastins that are part of the TAS2 receptor site, because it turns out that that L cell receptor for GLP-1 is the same on your tongue as the receptor for bitter. So we then think about what kind of diets have people eaten that live in the blue zones? They eat diets that have all sorts of complex taste profiles, spices and red and orange and green and blue colored foods that have these flavonoids that stimulate these receptors that then are associated with bitter taste receptors that then modulate naturally this process that we now have invented, which has not been just recently invented by the pharmaceutical industry, which is GLP-1 agonists. Now the difference is the pharmaceutical GLP-1 agonists are modulated molecules that have sustained ability to have the signal of GLP-1 staying in our body for a week at a time. What happens if you eat naturally a GLP-1 and a bitter food? It could be bitter melon, for instance, or it could be hops, or it could be Tartary buckwheat. These all are known to stimulate the GLP-1 agonists. So what happens in that case naturally is that the GLP-1 is released into the blood. It stays in the blood for about a half an hour, and then there's another enzyme in our body called DPP-4 that kind of releases it, gets rid of it. So why does the body do that? I mean, it's pretty intelligent, isn't it? Why does it make something and get rid of it so quickly? Maybe it has a master understanding of how these work that we don't when we make a synthetic derivative that stays in our body for a week at a time. So all these things become part of, let's not rely upon synthetic biology to create a natural process. Let's find a way to augment, to parrot that, and let's get people to understand how to modulate their body's function by the things that have been the tenets of natural foods revolution for 50 years.
Yeah, I think that's such an important, oh, I heard some cheer. Okay, yeah, let's go with it. Why not? Yes, and I think that's such an important topic. I love your angle on that. And we did have a session on GLP-1s yesterday. If you missed it, definitely check it out on demand because it was a great session. And I'm sure we could have a million follow-up questions on that. But since we're running out of time, I do want to ask you, you were at, I think, the first Expo West ever?
Yeah. So Doug Green, and let me just give a shout out to Doug Green, who started this brilliant idea through New Hope Communications, that he moved from New Hope, Pennsylvania to Boulder. And I have had the privilege of having Doug as a dear friend. He's a genius, entrepreneur. I think anyone that's known him would call him in a class of his own. And his concept when he put this together was, let's blend the best of education with the best of business sense, and let's create an entrepreneurial, investment-worthy enterprise that can grow this up and transform commerce in the United States. And the organic movement was born out of this, and there's so many things I could bore you to tears that went on over the years. But the key principle of all of this from the very beginning is the marriage of authentic information that was timeless, that could then pass through, that would shape the destiny of this new emergent industry. And the word science is an interesting word. It comes from the Latin scio, which means to know. So how do we know? We can know in many different ways. We can know by observation. That's the traditional Chinese medical model of thousands of years of history of observation to produce a knowing. And then there is Western kind of science, cause and effect, detailed interventional kind of trials. All this comes into a body of information that gives authenticity and gives an understanding of the reality and the value proposition of this form. And that's why we at our Big Bold Health Group are so excited about taking traditional certified agriculture, regenerative agriculture, applying it to a 3,500-year-old food, Himalayan tartary buckwheat, move it into the United States, get the most dedicated farmers who are growing this for the first time in the history of our country, and then make this available with the science that we are able to show. We just finished a clinical trial that we published showing that in 90 days of taking those nutrients, we could mark the immune system such that it slowed the rate of immune system aging by 47%. That's never, ever been shown before in any other human clinical trial. So the power of science coupled with the power of nature and the discovery process is the emergence of the 21st century of the natural products industry.
How incredible that you were at the first expo. Now you're here, 45 years later, 44 years later with Big Bold Health. You're up in the North Hall, which is where all the innovation is happening. And you keep breaking down barriers and doing new things. And I just think that's so remarkable. And we all need more of you in our lives, and thank you so much. I mean, thank you for doing this work, and I love how you're always asking questions and pushing. You said you've been having a lot of epiphanies here at this expo. What's one epiphany that you've had that you think is really about the future of this industry?
Well, I think the epiphany, by the way, come visit us at booth 816. We'd love to see you if you would stop by and see our tartary buckwheat stuff. But I think for me, it's the reconfirmation that the heart and soul of what has been the germ seed of this industry, that people like Sandy Gooch and Steve Demos and Tony Harnett and John Mackey, and I could go on the names of the founding people in this industry, has been preserved. The people come up that are new to the industry, they're wide-eyed, they're receptive, they want to know more, they want to be present, they want to be around as a sustaining force of change. That is really, I'm having my 79th birthday this month. That's really kind of very powerful advocacy for the next 20 years. So,
I feel like we should all sing you happy birthday, but we're out of time. So
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thanks,
Jessica,
everyone.
thank you.
My fan club is here.
The seat. I told you I was coming back. So I'm up here with three of the smartest people I know in the industry. As you see, their names are on the slides.
He doesn't
Tim,
know that
Jeff.
many people.
I don't know enough people. I've only been doing this for 12 years, so I'm still kind of reaching out and networking. But Tim, Jacqueline, Noah, as I said, some of the smartest people I know. We have a sort of a fairly complex progression of talk here today that starts with what everybody's talking about, GLP-1s, and we'll often use shorthand Ozempic, even though that's not sold for weight loss. I've called it the biggest thing to happen to supplements since the pandemic. And sounds smart ass, but I'm serious. There's probably not a product out there or a category out there that's on the floor that's not affected in some way, but mainly supplements and functional food. So we're going to start there and sort of move to what the opportunities, the science, the challenges, and then the regulatory aspect of that and the other threats. And then we're going to go all the way into politics. So Ozempics to politics. Could be interesting if they'll come along with me on the ride. So we did this Supplements in the Ozempic Age report about 3 months ago. And we did the market sizing, and we could see what the effect is already on the weight management category in the market there. And it's a little modest so far, but I think that's going to accelerate, and the way it's playing out is interesting. But we have 6.5% for weight management in our report, by the way. And that's up from a sort of low point. And it's not where it's going, I don't think. It's going to go on from there. But we also did consumer research. And some of the more interesting things is like all the side effects. There's a touch point for supplements in there. Nausea, of course, all the digestive issues, but muscle loss, all the obvious things. But there's stuff like mood that's in there that was surprising to me. So there's so many access points. And as Erica said, we went into before, during, after. And I really think from what we saw and just sort of intuitively that after is the big opportunity. When we looked at it, 14% of people made it over a year, which leaves twice as many people only made it 6 months, and then 4 times as many nearly only made it to that 1 year point at the most, 6 months to a year. So we're going to have that aftermarket. I think there's going to be cycling on and off, but I'm going to start with Noah because he can sort of look at where this is showing up, not just what's showing up, but where it's showing up. He did a story for us, or a guest piece for us a year ago, about how the e-pharmacies are going to be a bigger player in supplements than a lot of people expect. And that's where it came to in the compounding pharmacies. But there's a lot more to talk about. Well, let's start with that. Where is it showing up business-wise with an effect on supplements?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thanks for having me, Rick. I think, in the most immediate term for GLP-1s, I think we're starting to see some big changes since I wrote that article. One is that the FDA feels that the shortage is now done. So the compounding pharmacies like Hims and Ro Health, Hims' stock in just the last 12 months has increased by about 500% year over year, and it's largely built off the back of GLP-1s. So you're definitely seeing it in these digital health companies. And as a result of the success of Hims and the success of Ro, you're starting to see other companies like Edenmed and other just like very quick D2C e-commerce brands launching their own GLP-1 platforms. So it'll be interesting to see now that the shortage is over. But as a result of the success of GLP-1s, and the awareness too, I think I saw a stat that said the only other drug that has had the fastest amount of consumer household awareness penetration has been Lipitor. And I imagine that probably GLP-1s will eclipse Lipitor probably in the next 12 months. So as a result of the consumer household penetration awareness increasing, then as Rick was alluding to, we're starting to see more and more products that are focusing on some part of that GLP-1 journey, whether it's to support the nausea side effects or lean muscle mass, hydration, bone health, or they're wanting to create products that show that it boosts GLP-1 in a complementary way. So consumers that, when you look at some of the segmentation data, there still is a very large amount of consumers when you look at their consumer responses that actually have no desire to take a GLP-1 whatsoever, and sometimes as high as 40%. So that means that we're probably going to see more and more, functional VMS, functional food and beverage companies developing, supplements that help users along their journey, or for the ones that don't want to take GLP-1s at all, offer them something that can come close in theory, or what they hope will mimic it as well.
Yeah, and that's that before category. See, lots of people are afraid of pharma for good reason. And But there's been a halo effect, I think, that like, say the late 20-teens, there was a lot of talk like weight loss, not possible. Let's just give up on it. And now there's like, oh, something works. I think things that people had given up on have greater appeal or greater chance of traction. Well,
Can I overlay one thing on what Noah said?
Yeah, go ahead, and then I wanted to turn to you next.
Significant for tracking this. In talking with brands and also in talking with investors, we talk a lot about the 3 unique swim lanes. And one is as a straight alternative, which we have always done in this industry, right? Before these drugs, Jacqueline will talk about the history of them. They're not that new. And so then there's also the while you're on it swim lane, right? So the adjunct. That's really important. We'll probably talk more about that. But then I like to think about the swim lane that is the off-ramp. And that's because there's some really specific physiological things that happen when you go off of these very powerful incretin receptor agonists. So those 3 swim lanes, I think, are important to understand where the opportunities are.
Yeah, that's what we said when we had before, during, after. And after's, if it's not already, there's more people that used to be on Ozempic than are on it at any one time, and that's just going to get bigger and bigger. And I've talked about Ozempic season starting, right after your Super Bowl party and lasting until about June, and then getting tired of it, wanting to eat again, and getting, and then starting all over again, and wanting something to hold you in the meantime. But when I say biggest thing since the pandemic, and when you look across all your career and watching supplements, innovating there, where does this rank?
I don't know if it's as dynamic as what happened during the COVID era, but I think it is driving a lot of investment, and I hope that some good innovation comes out of it. One of the most interesting things I read in consumer research about users of these drugs is that they are open to all types of approaches while they're taking it, and then as soon as they can get off of it or are looking to get off of it, and they consider it a lifestyle management approach. So that's perfect for us, right? That's where we come from, and we can meet them in that kind of expectation. So I'm looking forward to that. Is it as big as the response that we saw in COVID? No, thankfully. We don't ever want to go through that type of a disruption again. We also have to make sure, though, that we have an appropriate voice, because we missed a massive opportunity never to be repeated, we hope, with COVID in terms of talking collectively as a nutrition industry. We have a voice of authority gap in our space, and we need to start assuming that voice of authority. We missed it on COVID. It was an obligation, and we abdicated. Now, with this lesser of a phenomenon, I think we need to establish that voice of authority to make sure that people understand those options, the 3 we talked about, and that the products are making appropriate and responsible claims.
Yeah, and we're not going to see the spike that we saw in there, but this thing, this thing has legs. We were talking backstage. It's not going away. But he brought up investment, where innovation comes from. Where do you see the innovation? Where do you want to see the innovation? Now, before we get a little further, Jacqueline wrote a piece for our dark issue that we'll talk about in a little bit, but it's about where she sees the innovation needs to be, but where is it now?
So I think, first of all, what I want to say is we are an industry that already has so many of the tools that people undergoing a weight loss journey for any reason, be it surgical or dietary or using a GLP receptor agonist, we are the right place for people to land. And I think what I would say is wherever you are in innovation, we need to make this space, I think this is part of what you're saying, Tim, we need to make this a welcoming community and home for people who want to tap into what we are the experts in, because this is what we are good at. So many tools we already have, and I think it's going to be a lot about how companies embrace that and communicate it to the people who need it. So I always say multivitamins. I know it's the least exciting thing, but anybody who is losing weight needs basic fundamental nutrition. Noah mentioned bone health. We've talked about muscle. These are all multivitamins, protein, calcium, vitamin K. These are the things we've always had and we're just good at, and we need to put them in the right package and talk about them the right way. When it comes to innovation, I think every category Tim mentioned just now is ripe for innovation. So products positioned correctly to support people who are either never going to want new medications or who are not ready for that yet, but they're trying to maybe prepare themselves in some way, right? So that's a whole category for innovation. For people on product, it's not just managing side effects, but there's a thing that happens for people when they have lost or are losing large amounts of weight that I call the moment where the door opens and the window of opportunity happens for them. So as people become metabolically healthier and they lose weight, all kinds of things that didn't work for them before now work. All kinds of things. So I'm not surprised when you say that other categories seem to be tagging along. Makes perfect sense for me, because most of the time, even for these people, if they've gone to a physician, they've just said, hey, you need to go manage your weight. You need to go home and eat less and exercise more, and then we can talk about these other things. And then that post time, one more second, that's yours. Post time is probably the biggest window of opportunity that we have always had, that we have never fully embraced as an industry. Weight loss maintenance has never sounded exciting, but you all, probably many of you in this room, have lost significant amounts of weight and regained significant amount of weight. In fact, people do it over and over and over again. They lose 10 pounds and they regain 15. They lose 100 pounds and they regain 70 pounds, right? Maintaining weight, so everything that we can do to help people maintain a healthy resting metabolic rate, to maintain and develop lean body mass, which is more metabolic than fat mass, right? Anything we can do to help people manage appetite, we're good at that. Like, this is the place where natural products work, and they work really, really well, and we can make a huge difference in helping people maintain the success that they've had.
And there's a sweet spot in there of like you said, the maintaining the success. That's where we shine.
It is.
And get
yes.
there.
If I could just add on to her point about the innovation, because I think it's really germane to why we're all gathered here for Natural Products Expo West. But I think to the point that was made about COVID, COVID was a potentiator and force multiplier and accelerator of change, and GLP-1 is that similar accelerator of things that were already trending. And I think there's certain categories that we're seeing that's having a massive force multiplying effect due to GLP-1, protein and fiber and probably electrolytes, right? So those categories were already on the upswing for a myriad of other reasons, and now GLP-1 comes and has a specific complementary use case for that. I think the other thing, when you look at kind of the data, the New Consumer and Coefficient Capital put out some of their trends report, and what they found is a few things. One is that the GLP-1 consumer, their taste buds change. And so when we're talking about innovation, I think there's not only innovation from a functional ingredient type, but also from a product format and meeting people where they're at or where they're going to be as a result of this change. So whether it's in powders or functional food and beverage products or specific supplements that complement, part of the wellness journey of their day. The other thing is that they have a higher propensity to pay for premium. So I think that's really good, because a lot of the ingredients from an innovation standpoint, that Jacqueline was talking about, are typically probably going to be more premium price. And when we look at GLP-1 related products in the market today, they're typically at a higher price point. They're typically not at a mass price point. They're more at a premium price point. And the final thing, which I think is interesting from an innovation standpoint, which is exciting to any of the finished product companies in the audience, is that the discovery and the openness to trying new products is higher in GLP-1 consumers. So we're having these consumers that are changing because their entire life is changing, and then we're also force multiplying some existing trends and opening the door for some new bigger ones.
Yeah.
Can I say something just real quick about context and history? It's really interesting if you think about support for people who are using these medicines. Think about drug nutrient depletions. So Jeff has lectured on this for many years. Jim Laval has published extensively on drug nutrient depletions. We are looking at the mother of all drug nutrient depletions. Why? Most Americans and Western consumers have a poor diet, micronutrition, macronutrition, and other. Now they're just eating a lot less of that diet. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
So
you can fit everything into 600 calories without even thinking about it, right?
No, it's actually one of the biggest concerns. I mean, for anybody who has tracked all therapies for massive weight loss for 20 or 25 years, and I know probably all of us have been in that category, people who already have overweight, obesity, have gone through multiple rounds of weight loss, the nutritional deficiencies are already known and measurable. And I track some of these in research on a regular basis, and I kind of use B1 deficiency, right, as a red flag. And the number of case reports, as we see increasing prescriptions for GLPs, the number of case reports for acute B1 deficiency are just every month. They're just rising and rising. And it's case reports, and it's not, big collective studies yet. But it's kind of a marker for exactly what Tim is talking about, is to say this is a genuine thing that we should be talking about and that we as an industry should be supporting.
Yeah, and you were saying that. It's like, does the language need to change? And have you seen it happen so far that are we welcoming these people, either the off-ramp or while they're on, in talking about micronutrients in a different way that needs to happen? Do you think so? Any of you?
No.
No.
No. I think we're in the new CBD phase. It's really new. It's like when CBD and cannabinoids were a trend or a fad, looking back now. I think are we going to make some predictions too?
Go for it.
Before we leave here? No, I just think that it's very, very new, and so the languaging, the messaging is still being sorted out. If you walk on the show floor, you just see a lot of GLP-1, right? GLP-1, some say friendly, some say other types of things. So I think it's too new to exactly sort that out. I don't see a lot of the nutritional support messaging really hitting the bullseye, but maybe we can talk about it. I'd like to talk about where it's going to go, though.
Yeah,
make some predictions.
Yeah, we're going to get there, but it brings me back to something when Jacqueline and I have been talking. She has, you have a long history dealing with obesity and weight management as, from a supplement angle, and you could talk about that a little bit, but we know that out there in a very niche market, there's bariatric vitamins, but I don't know if I've seen a GLP-1 vitamin. I've been seeing people try to be it or a meal replacement, but I haven't seen the multi that's at the dose it needs to be. Have you?
I have, yeah. There's a couple of smaller brands do. Actually, I know Bariatric Fusion does. I think maybe their sister brand, Pure Encapsulations, may have one now. So some of the core weight management bariatric brands
are. GLP-1 is on the label.
I think I've seen 2 at this point. It's possible I've seen 3. I think I've seen 2. But they're, again, very niche in the way, they wouldn't be here. They're very niche in the way that they're being marketed. I'm not even sure that is I'm not a marketing person. I'm not sure that is the right way to do this. I think we're going to be looking at a large enough part of the population that is either has taken or has access to these medications. I mean, we're at 12% of the population right now taking a GLP. That is the population roughly of the state of California. That's a lot of people.
That's a little bit of a market.
It's a slight market. But I think the data says that when the new generation oral drugs come, and they're coming, not tomorrow almost, right? No, I mean,
pretty soon,
a year from now at the
pharma world.
In the pharma world, that the potential when we get to very effective drugs that are not delivered by injection to move upwards to 30 or 40% of the population is completely reasonable. And now we have to really, I think about, we're talking about close to half a population of the United States. That's a lot of people. Should we be using a language that only refers to GLP, or should we be talking more about a broader category of health as it relates to body weight or body fat or something else?
Yeah, and you were talking about what's that off-ramp language and the sort of the voice that we didn't find for COVID. What does that voice sound like? And is there where is it? What's waiting at the off-ramp? Is it a little tea set or is it?
Well, I think Jacqueline has talked about the patterns of the past that are really good teachers. So we've had bariatric medicine, so we know what that looks like in terms of the regain or rebound effect. The weight that you regain is mostly from fat, and you get actually obesity with sarcopenia. So you lose muscle and you have overfat. So anybody that's going off one of those medicines should be concerned with blunting the regain mostly of fat. And there's been some strategies that have been tried pharmaceutically. So metformin, and there's some papers out there on other things that you can do to blunt that effect. We have tools, and this is the predictive or the innovation future, that can help with that. And we should be doing the research to demonstrate that that would work. But I also think we should talk about where the future of pharma is going. Because one thing I learned from Jeff, which I'll never forget, is that medicine is rooted in one molecule, one receptor. But when it comes to these incretin hormones, of which there are 30 or more, I think you can see the pharmaceutical companies will go towards not just one hormone, but multiple. And then maybe lower dosages, perhaps individualized dosages. And so if pharma is going in that direction, we can actually try to get there first and use agents like collagen peptides that are tailored for raising not just GLP-1 naturally, but CCK or other hormones, PYY and other things. There's a lot of food molecules or components of food that will naturally blunt appetite, create an experience of fullness, and give lifestyle managing consumers the effects that they want. Just not at the same level of a drug that has a half-life of almost a week.
Is that the before market, or is this the after market?
I think
it doesn't sound like during.
It could be both, and it could be clearly the never drug approach, which is an alternative.
But with the modest expectation and the language around it, this isn't a drug.
Yeah, I think it's all of them, Tim. I mean, I think it's clearly actually at least people taking medication and that off-ramp market, but I think it's also the never category.
I
think it's all of them.
It's all three.
Well, what I would add is, I'm going to take a complementary approach. And again, when we're looking at massive market forces that's happening right now, the other massive market force is health insurance companies reimbursing for nutrition counseling finally. And so that opens up a gigantic market, because now the barrier to, and again, if we're kind of focused on what would a kind of a de-prescription world, which is what Maveron VC, a really prominent VC, their thesis is really around the de-prescription market is where the opportunity is with GLP-1. But if we think about that offboarding approach, just the fact now that pretty much almost everyone in this room could check their insurance benefits, and I guarantee a large percentage of you guys would be able to have free nutrition counseling sessions. And so now there's companies that are stepping into that fray to do that, but then also you're having our grocers stepping in. Like Kroger Health, for example, has the largest nutritionist RD network of any grocery chain, and now they accept insurance. So when you think about somebody coming off, and so why does that also dovetail with GLP-1s? Because if you look at the earnings reports recently for Kroger, Walmart, and Albertsons, they all mentioned that their top line revenue was boosted in Q4 because of GLP-1 prescription revenues. So you're having all these customers coming into their stores, going to the pharmacy, and they're probably going to increase the amount of GLP-1 sets, which are going to be around probably supporting and offboarding. And then also you have these, in the case of Kroger Health, you have these nutrition networks that are now reimbursed, so they can help to create, for the people that are like, I've tried the GLP-1s, or I don't want to do the GLP-1s, can you help me create this plan so I can achieve my weight loss goals or maintain my weight loss goals? You have this infrastructure. And the final thing I'll say really kind of touches around the power of algorithms and AI is you have companies like BiteWell, again, that work with Kroger Health to help a consumer identify what's healthy in the store and put healthy things in their basket. So you can have these algorithm companies like BiteWell, merge with Kroger Health to basically help somebody on this offboarding journey and very quickly identify things that are going to be good for them. And that's a macro trend now that basically there's no additional out-of-pocket cost, because we know the number one reason why people cycle off GLP-1s comes down to loss of insurance coverage, or they just can't afford it out of pocket anymore.
Yeah, and that whole loss of compounding is going to change that a lot. Well, but we have up here this new relationship with pharma. It has changed. Vitamin Shoppe is selling a drug now. We didn't expect that to happen. And we're not saying that's bad, but there are some things that are going wrong that Jacqueline talked about in our story. That's just overclaims about GLP-1. Do you want to explain a little bit that? Our headline on the story that Jacqueline wrote, or the guest piece she wrote, was GLP not.
You made that title.
I know. I came up with that. I'm proud to say.
I think, here's the general big picture that I would put out there to this audience is, and I think, what you just outlined, Noah, is really part of it, is there's two ways that we can have a relationship as an industry to what is happening right now in pharmaceutical weight management. And one is to be adversarial with it, and the other is to do a full embrace and be part of a cycle that is usually not just a one and done cycle. It is an ongoing life cycle for an individual in a population. So the part that I think has bothered me all along is that oppositional part. That's these medications are bad, you are a bad person for taking these medications, and hey, here's a shiny thing that you can use that's going to be your replacement for this medication or for this effective treatment. This is not really what Tim is talking of, people who are self-selecting out of this, right? Because there's people who are always going to self-select out. But it is really a culture that continues to play into a shame and blame game for individuals who have a real health condition that needs to be managed and supported through nutrition for that management process.
Yeah, but like I said, in the story of the rest, there's sort of the overclaims of putting GLP-1 on everything. And I saw some stuff down there very questionable. But at the same time, can we really expect any regulators coming after that? We talked really about it's going to be the drug companies.
We were
coming after
talking
more
about
of
that. I think Noah and I agree on this, that there's been a focus on the compounding space, and we're sort of moving past that now. But I will not be surprised if it is either the NAD or I think class action, or we should expect something. And if you just step back and you take a look at the way a lot of products are titled, right? And just take the word GLP out and drop another hormone in there, drop insulin in there for everything that you see titled. If that makes you uncomfortable, there's a reason that it makes you uncomfortable.
But you're saying FTC and NAD. It's not going to be FDA right now, or you say plaintiffs and NAD and drug companies. It's not going to be the FDA right now. It might not be the FTC. And that's our next panel coming on, talking about Bobby Kennedy. And at least the perception is, and the perception that the critics are picking up on right now, is that handcuffs are off. It's free reign. I've talked to people. I talked to a lawyer the other day. That's the perception of when he's talking to me, what's the risk level? The risk level's down like this on introducing anything. And
According to Eli Lilly, being a skeptic is now a good word, because they ran full-page ads in the Wall Street Journal saying you should be skeptical of what is in your medicine. Of course, they were directing that towards compounding pharmacies who were selling semaglutide at a cheaper price. But I think that is the right message, right? We're all skeptical, right? Show us the evidence. What gets to root cause medicine and true health and wellness? And so I think in this environment, it'll be interesting to see how true voice of authority meets proper regulation around reasonable and realistic standards. And I don't know if this is the right political, social, cultural environment or time for that. I would hope so.
Do you worry that the overstatements are going to get big? I mean, like I said, there's a perception that they are. We all know about Stripe. It's the organization that's pushing for these limits to sales to minors. It's already happened in New York for weight management and for muscle building. And the leader of that was quoted saying that this is it's going to be a free pass to marketing predatory products. Does that? How is that going to matter? I know somebody else told me, as I said before, like the risk that the lawyers are seeing is low, and somebody else told me it's the careful what you wish for moment. That everybody's going to get out ahead of it, and there's a backlash. And, 2026 coming up real soon. If you're a state person, this is a thing to run on. Anybody worried? I am.
I mean, I think there's probably three ways to look at the risk profile, of the GLP-1, the non-GLP-1 space, the functional VMS and functional food and beverage products from a claims perspective. I think, there's the true regulatory perspective, which is FDA, FTC. It sounds like there's changes there. Then there is what I would say is kind of the commercial and or industry trade group kind of enforcement perspective, the NAD class action attorney. And then I think there's one that probably is most applicable to younger demos, but we're seeing a rise in the use of social media, both for social selling and social proof, and you're really using reviews and consumers going to social media first to investigate and look at a product and the quality of the product. And I think actually that, to me, over the next 12 to 24 months, if there is more of a free rein as far as what's going to be coming into the market, I do wonder how much social media and kind of the collective will naturally enforce what works and what doesn't. And people like particularly younger demos are much more vocal about sharing what they're doing. And so I think that social component and how GLP-1 related products are going to be validated or vilified such that it's then going to open up the enforcement action, whether it's from a government regulator or from a NAD or from a class action attorney, is I think something to watch.
Well, when I say, or what I heard, careful what you wish for a moment, what do you see in there? I mean, there's some things that have already happened. We've seen, layoffs in the human food division that came right away, part of DOJ, but who's defending that? Is Bobby Kennedy defending that? And the new, the director, Jim Jones, who had some really good ideas about enforcement, dropped off, and now we have, new person who's Don Jr.'s hunting buddy. Are you worried? Is it the moment?
Well, look, there's a major disconnect. First, as I mentioned earlier, in the voice of authority gap. So Noah was talking about how information that comes from the internet can set unrealistic expectations. Heavy metals is a perfect example. We have a lot of conversations going on from activists who speak from a position of ignorance. It's very, very demonstrably, provably true. And so they create a false expectation about what we can realistically and reasonably deliver in safe, pure, clean food. What we're describing right now, this moment, is really just at least the third incarnation of the pure food movement that goes back to the early 1900s. And so there's a disconnect and cross-purpose between regulation to get toxins out of the food supply and what's going on the innovation side. So regulation is not matched with innovation. And I think we're going to need to see some changes in how regulation is applied to what we do if we're able to talk fairly about what we do and to accrue innovation to actually innovate.
Yeah, God, and we're going to run out of time any second here. But I wanted to bring up one thing that was brought up to me last night. There's Make Texas Healthy Again, and there's a measure there, a bill that's out there that has calls for warning labels for ingredients that are banned in Europe, Canada, the UK, and Australia, I believe. And melatonin's on that list. So there could be a warning label for melatonin and say, hey, this is banned somewhere else. So I think there's effects. There's like I said, careful what you wish for. Is anybody worried about little, concrete things like that? And the, loss of grass idea, all these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I worry more about what Tim's talking about that disconnect between, the aspects of the sort of supply chain and food chain, but I do have a little nagging worry about on things like grass for ingredients, since our industry has relied extremely heavily on that pathway, and where that could come back in hidden ways to bite us, definitely.
If there's a moment for governmental change, which means regulatory change, we should seize upon that, and I'll tell you why. There's so much that we could do, but if we don't have agreement on what's safe or what isn't safe, or if we don't have the proper framework for innovation so that it can be done well, it can be done safely, but it's not inhibited, you cannot have every new innovation be either an approved food additive or a prescription drug or some similar burden of proof on safety and efficacy. We'll never innovate anything. And so we need to change how that works. I know that there's critics of GRAS. I disagree with them vehemently. I think they don't understand it. They don't really understand the process. But we should have a conversation about how to regulate safe innovation.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to the other part of that perception of what's out there, that there's a sort of a feeling from a lot of people, this is anti-science moment. And what does that mean? And there's a culture, could supplements be drawn into the culture wars? And when we saw it with food, I don't know if you guys heard this, Cracker Barrel a couple of years ago put Impossible sausage on the menu, and that was woke sausage that people were boycotting. So can this, right now it's supplements accepted across the political spectrum, but I think that anti-science thing, and that's what the other guys take, it could happen. But we're out of time, and I'd love to talk about this off stage with anybody who will listen. But we're gonna hand off here to next to you. We have some people from Maha Action, and Bill Giebler is gonna pick up that, my colleague.
Thank you.
And let's see where that goes. Thank you. No.
Oh, okay.
You always run out of time. You start by worrying if you have enough time, and then did you feel good about it, you guys?
Yeah.
I didn't put you on the spot too much on politics. I had to get some in.
No.
Help? Of course. Good thing I said it in a nice way. Hi, I'm Bill Giebler. I'm back. I hope you were here for a data presentation a little bit ago. I'm really excited about this panel. Very important conversation. We're calling it Navigating the MAHA Age, an insider take. And we've got a few insiders here for this conversation. And I was trying to listen in that last panel. They got into the politics and some of the concerns a little bit, and we'll get into that as well. But we have folks here who are pretty close to RFK Jr. and can tell us, to the degree we can know the future, we're going to talk about the future. So Vani Hari, I want to start with you. Vani Hari, also AKA Food Babe, food activist. 10 years ago, you were testifying in front of the Senate. Since then, you've started a brand, a plant-based protein supplement company. I think you're a good person to start with because there's a tremendous alignment between the MAHA message and the intentions of this industry, and the intentions of this industry that have existed for 40, 50 years. And it's sort of the reason for being for a lot, professional reason for being for a lot of the people in this room. And yet, when you make it into an acronym and it's MAHA, it can be a trigger word for a lot of people. And so that's one of the things we're feeling a lot in the industry and in the political situation. So in some ways, it feels like the right message from the wrong people. For a lot of people. I'm not saying that that's it, but I think that's one of the challenges we feel in this industry, right message, wrong people, and I'd love for you to speak to that if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everybody. I have been so jaded by politics, and I just have to tell you some background. I mean, I campaigned for Al Gore, I campaigned for John Kerry, two losers, right? And I was a delegate for President Obama 2 times. I used my delegate status to actually protest in front of the Secretary of Agriculture because he didn't follow through on his promise to label genetically engineered ingredients, which I know so many people here today care about. And I think you use the political environment and the political willpower of who is in office to your advantage. And right now, we have the biggest advantage ever, where at the highest levels of leadership, we are talking about the issues that I have been fighting for over a decade. Getting chemicals out of our food, the chemicals that you, being a natural, organic food company, have purposely removed and prohibited from your products, right? Now we have a president who is actually talking about it in the joint address just a few days ago on the national stage to both Congress and Senate, and it's an opportunity that I've never seen before. And to allow a partisan viewpoint to enter the stage in this opportunity that we've never had before is so maddening to me, because poison is not partisan. Children who have cancer don't know whether you're Democrat or Republican. We have the worst life expectancy period of any other developing nation. We have 38% of our preteens who are pre-diabetic, 15% having fatty liver disease when it used to be 0. We have 7 million children being diagnosed with ADHD. But we still have American food companies using ingredients that are banned or regulated heavily in other countries in the products that they serve us here in the United States, where they make better, safer products for everyone else. And that needs to change. And now that topic is at the highest levels of leadership. And I just beg everyone in this room, and I'm not going to go much longer because I want everyone to have an opportunity to talk about this specific issue, because I just beg everybody in this room, this is a moment of bipartisanship We have West Virginia, who just passed a ban on artificial food dyes in the entire state, the first state to do this. And this would have never happened had it not been from the bubbling up grassroots at the state level to make that happen, where it was a majority of a vote. And then we have, red number 3 getting banned by the FDA. That would have never happened had it not been for a Republican senator from Alabama who questioned, thank you, the FDA, right? We have an opportunity that we've never had before, and it's because, again, we have both sides of the aisle talking about this together, and we've awakened the entire country to these issues that many of us in this room have been fighting for our entire lives. And it is a moment to come together to solve these issues. So thank you.
That's great, Bonnie. Thank you. I think we might come back to how to make that a nonpartisan issue, because it feels largely like it is at this point. And so
I don't see anything partisan being discussed.
Yeah, well, I'll go to you, Callie. So we've got Callie Means here, founder of TrueMed, co-author of Good Energy with his sister Casey Means, and food policy, food systems policy, and health expert, and in policy and advocacy. You've got a lot of experience in government and elsewhere as an entrepreneur. The message is not partisan. The messengers might be, and I think that's what we run into. But what I want to ask you, Callie, is even where there's a lot of agreement on the what of, let's go bigger, let's go to the Trump policy. There's agreement on the what of Trump policy, for instance, maybe reshoring of manufacturing by way of tariffs. There's probably more agreement on that as a concept until you get to the how, and then there's just less enthusiasm about how some of these things are done. My question for you, Callie, is can we trust, I guess I'm asking you to pull out your political crystal ball, can we trust Donald Trump to follow through on this? He said, yes, RFK, yes, Maha, let's do this. We're excited, Vonnie is excited about this message. Is it going to sustain? What's going to happen here?
There's 2 reasons you should trust President Trump to make good on this generational promise and what are we talking about? We are talking about putting the brands here, people that are fighting for healthy food, people that are fighting for healthy supplementation, people that are fighting for root cause health, putting them at the center of medicine, where today 95% of the $4.9 trillion of medicine spending right now is on interventions after people get sick, is on the fact that people are being poisoned by ultra-processed food, by toxic food, by our environmental factors, by overproliferation of drugs and toxins in our drugs, and that they are then being managed diseases, and that's how the medical system is making money. Del and I and Vonnie have been in Bobby's loose kitchen cabinet. I've had an insight. I actually connected Bobby to President Trump hours after the Butler assassination attempt, and had a small window into their discussions, and they bonded over this issue hours after President Trump almost was millimeters away from being shot in the head. And they talked about, after that assassination attempt, about the generational opportunity to have this presidency be the time that the devastating rise of childhood chronic disease and chronic disease in general will reverse. They talked emotionally for hours, not about political horse trading, but about why the hell 38% of teens right now have prediabetes in the United States, why 50% of teens are overweight or obese, and that's like 2% in Japan, why US life expectancy is 6 years less than the Italians, and we spend 4 times more per capita on healthcare spending when we're not lazier than Italians. I love Italians, but we're not lazier than them. There's something clearly wrong, and they bonded, and I think Del's been close to it and he can tell you. There's a true bond between these 2 men. Whatever you think about them, they have something very admirable where they are warriors, and they have taken a lot of arrows. They've literally been shot at, and they move on, and they want generational change, and President Trump wants generational change. The second reason we should be very confident is that as a political consultant early in my career, we just have to be pragmatic here. The politics drive the policy. The politics drive the policy. I don't want to speak for Del, but Del met with President Trump with Bobby in 2016. And they talked about President Trump not listening. I personally don't really blame President Trump for that. There's a lot of prioritizations that he has to do. Del might have a different opinion, but right now when Del and Bobby and we all, the Army is speaking, there's voters behind this. There's a dynamic right now where Maha moms, or people in this audience, where the millions of people that took the jump to vote for President Trump because of this issue, which is very clear, the gender gap closed, independents were 50-50. Nobody would have predicted that 8 years ago. Young people 50-50, who would have predicted that? So you had Maha voters come. So there's a real political coalition. And this is politics, right? So Bobby has a true coalition behind him. There's never been a cabinet secretary in modern American history that has more of an army behind him. Maha moms mobbed the halls of the Senate. They mobbed the phone calls. So I think we've got a big opportunity. And I just want to make a point, just real quick, about what this means. Maha to me is a 12-year journey. We are putting a stake in the ground where the future of healthcare is not accepting that kids poison themselves and then jabbing them with Ozempic. I am shocked that at a conference like this, they're saying that we need to bear hug, and Jacqueline before me is saying that we need to embrace Ozempic. That is ridiculous. This room is a zero-sum game. We should absolutely have drugs, but what Bobby is saying, what the mantle here is that the $4.9 trillion we spend on healthcare should go to the most efficacious treatments to prevent and reverse disease. When we talk about the American Academy of Pediatrics saying that the first-line defense for obesity should be Ozempic for 12-year-olds, which is what they say right now, that is an assault on companies in this room, because it's taking $1,600 of taxpayer money a month, accepting that kids are going to be poisoned with ultra-processed food, and then drugging them. It would be much, much cheaper to have medical dollars flow to incentivize all the businesses in this room who are fighting against bad incentives to make their food healthy. Everyone in this room is making trade-offs to put healthy ingredients in their food. The most efficacious way we can move medical dollars to prevent and reverse disease is help entrepreneurs in this room. Yes, drugs should be available, but we should not be partnering with Ozempic. We should be proudly, as an industry, saying that we need to be part of the healthcare mix, and we should have good science explaining why we have a chronic disease crisis, which is because of food and because of supplementation and because of toxins. We should study that, and we should drive trillions of dollars to incentivize differences. So I do not think we should be drinking the Kool-Aid that we should be partnering with Ozempic. I think everyone in this room should be getting their customers to call Congress and support Bobby to drive medical dollars to food and other root cause interventions.
Thank you, Kelly. Passionate.
We don't have a lot of time. Let's try to get it out.
Del, and I want to let you know we are going to go over time. We're going to run a little past the bottom of the hour. But Del Bigtree is next up here. Del is the founder, CEO, I guess, of The Highwire, founder of The Highwire, a popular podcast. Also founder of the ICANN network, the Informed Consent Action Network. And the reason you're here today, though, really is the relationship with Bobby Kennedy, and that for RFK Jr. for president, Del was the communications manager. And so we're really working closely with Robert Kennedy. I want to move to supplement shortly, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to add to those two questions, how do we align, really? And maybe that's a good one. Like, how do we make it a nonpartisan issue? Or should we?
I mean, it's insane that this is a partisan issue. And I think that there's many people in this conference right now that are about to commit suicide if they actually believe in a future of natural health, of vitamins, of supplements. You have a HHS secretary for the first time in any of our lifetime just dealt with measles and said, vitamin A is a treatment for measles. You should be getting vitamin B, C, and D, if you want to have a healthy life. Healthy foods play a huge role in how you're going to deal with any infectious disease. Gave the opportunity for everyone in the country, whatever you believe in. If you want vaccines, we're going to make sure they're there, but there are other, ways to live in this world. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. I grew up a family of environmentalists. I wasn't vaccinated as a child, not because my parents were conservative Republicans, but because they were hippies from the 1960s. They were crunchy granola. I grew up with macrobiotic food. I never went to a doctor. I only saw chiropractors, homeopaths, and we had vitamins as a part of how we move forward. I sat in the Senate and watched with my brother sitting next to me, raised exactly the same way. We both did not die. And I watched our entire party vote against a man who is simply one of the world's greatest environmentalists, cleaned up our rivers, cleaned up our air, cleaned up our food supply, and now we're about to get him into the government to finally speak for everyone that's at this conference and say, there is a better way forward. There's a holistic life that doesn't involve drugging you with every single issue you have, waiting and having a sick care system that only cares about you once you're dying and can't wait to get you on that conveyor belt. Now, get in early for a diagnosis because we have pre-cancer drugs, pre-diabetes drugs. It's always drugs, 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 and yet everyone here that, at this conference that is making this a political issue, what are you going to do? You're going to stand with the party of pharma? But I sat there with my brother saying, our party today is voting against an environmentalist that we stood with our whole lives, is voting against natural health right now. The Democratic Party just ceded all holistic health over the Republican Party. I don't know why it happened, but Bonnie's right. If we don't seize this moment that we finally have a president letting us speak and is going to change the FDA, change the CDC, and stop all the regulations, stop destroying natural health, but supporting it, if you're going to decide to be partisan, then what are we doing here? I mean, are we that stupid?
This is a nonpartisan issue, but it is unfortunately political right now. I think the Bobby mantra and this mantra that we all agree with, if we close our eyes and don't know who's talking, we all agree with it. But I want just to make a partisan point. The fact that President Trump and Bobby Kennedy have seized this, and the fact that Democrats at the joint address sit on their hands when a child who's 13 years old stands up, who just recovered from brain cancer after being poisoned by toxins, which President Trump mentioned for the first time in an address, as Bonnie said, the fact that Democrats are sitting on their hands, this is a stone cold loser for them. So if you are a Democrat, this is an issue where you need to try to out-Maha the Republicans. That's what we, I think, need to create in society. This is a loser to be against this issue. And if you don't like Bobby Kennedy or Trump, well, tell the Democrats to try to follow suit, because they are going to get crushed if they don't get on board with this. They look terrible right now.
All right, good. Well, great. Let's move then. Let's move from politics and into dietary supplements, because this is the state of supplements. We're talking about supplements, and one of the big concerns right now, and it's not necessarily MAHA, it's not necessarily RFK Jr., but it's DOGE. There's shrinking of federal agencies, including FDA and FTC. One of the big challenges with dietary supplements is there's plenty of regulation. People like to label this as an unregulated industry. It's a very well regulated, but poorly enforced industry. And now there's fewer regulators, or there's likely to be smaller offices doing this regulation.
Disagree with the premise, but.
Is this going to be, let me put it this way. I'd like to, everyone in this room and at this conference, or most people here, we often talk about the industry, like the dietary supplement industry, but it's the people who come to these conferences and are part of the trade organizations are part of the responsible dietary supplement industry. And we're all very well aware of this other faction out there that's making unscrupulous brands making products that are intentionally or unintentionally adulterated, and are fraudulent, and in some cases dangerous. Is this going to be a green light for more of that unscrupulous innovation?
I'll be quick. So I disagree with the premise that these things standing in the way of better health is more spending or more bureaucrats at the FDA, and the small cuts that they've made take us back to, I think, 2022 levels. So just point there. I think we're really in this misnomer where more spending on the healthcare system, we spend 4 times more than any other country in the world, is the key to health. It's actually irrational. But getting to, I think there's actually some misinterpretations of what this administration is trying to do. I actually think if you listen, and I have 3 quick points to the supplement industry on this, and my company TrueMed, I know, is working with many of you guys here to unlock HSA, FSA spending. That's point 1. I actually think the supplement industry should be going on offense, that supplementation, vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin D, omega-3s, actually clinically are more efficacious treatments. than a lot of the drugs that are getting a ton of insurance reimbursements. I think one thing Bobby Kennedy and President Trump are saying is that we need to get back to foundational research at the NIH why we're sick, and then that NIH research can actually underlie more eventual insurance reimbursement for the supplement industry. So you can take advantage right now when your customers get a letter of medical necessity recommending root cause interventions like supplementation. But I think thinking about in the coming years more medical reimbursement for supplements. Number two is I don't think it's going to be necessarily a deregulatory environment. You know, they've talked actually very forcefully about toxins in our food and supplements, and they've talked about GRAS standards. Marty McCary for the FDA is testifying today. So I think actually more scrutiny and more analysis of the chemicals and the GRAS standards, you know, that apply to supplementation, and it's going to be a differentiator to have clean chemicals. And number three is a huge principle that's being talked about. You don't need more FDA folks for this, but it's transparency. I think there's going to be a real emphasis on transparency and what's in there and consumers having transparency. So I don't know if that's deregulatory, more regulatory, but I think brands that can show medical efficacious implementations, more transparency, and embrace actually the FDA and having stronger GRAS standards are going to be winning brands.
Yeah, interesting. I think part of the concern too is with or if there is less enforcement, which you're saying you don't think is going to happen, which is probably good news. It moves to the states. We're seeing that in some cases. Rick mentioned that on the last panel. Or it moves to plaintiffs' lawyers and class action suits that don't really serve anyone. And so that's one of the concerns. I will see how that goes. And then,
Bill, I just want to add to what Callie was saying. There's this idea that's being floated around that when you get rid of personnel at the FDA, that it's going to make it less effective. It's been a complete, utter failure to the American people over the last, 50 years since they allowed these chemicals into our food supply under this thing called the GRAS loophole, where the chemical companies themselves look at the safety data. Even if the FDA says no, it's not allowed, they still put it in the food environment. So they've been an utter failure. And then when I look at what's happening in the media and how they're using this to make this administration look bad, is they talk about Jim Jones, who was the head of US Foods, and I had the opportunity to meet with him in early January. We brought to him, I met with him with several food advocates, and we brought to him specific issues that the FDA needed to address, like finding a fertility drug in Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, finding crazy levels of heavy metals in school food, talking about why it took so long to get Red 3 banned when it was banned in cosmetics 30 years ago. And hey, have you followed up about the fact that Red number 40 hasn't been reviewed in over a decade? The sense of urgency was lacking. And he's right to leave the organization. And I was so excited actually to see that Kyle DeMantis, who quickly got put into that position, because he's got intellectual honesty about these issues that are plaguing the American food system. And then now we've got Dr. Marty McCary going through his confirmation today, and he wants to look at the root cause of why so many people are sick. So he's going to have, again, that intellectual honesty that we haven't had in this regulatory body for so long.
Look at supplements like food. It's the same thing, and I think there's opportunity for engagement with the administration on this. And I wouldn't say it's a hands-off attitude to food. I think they're actually saying we actually need more scrutiny at the FDA. The FDA has lost its way when it comes to food and supplements. So, yeah.
Let's talk about science. Del, I wonder if you could take this. What do you see as the role of science, particularly in dietary supplements, in an RFK, HHS?
Well, I would hope that the whole world that I've grown up in, when you look at supplements, the things that I've cared about, it looks like the entire regulatory industry, which the pharmaceutical industry loves, because they're the ones that can handle the $100 million randomized control trial. Then they say to all of you, you can't say anything, you can't declare what you think your product can do. And so you're stuck in this place where they're manipulating their studies. You know that they're putting out a bunch of baloney. It can't be proven. Their science is totally rigged by the industry itself. They're paying for their own safety trials. They're paying for their own efficacy trials. And then the FDA is signing off on it. Now you're worried that we're going to downsize an entire system that's designed to fight for the drug company and against supplement companies? That's insane, you know? we finally, we finally have an opportunity where you have someone really looking and, one of the things behind the scenes, and I don't know if they'll get there, but very interesting conversations. I didn't realize that the FDA original mandate was just for safety and quality. Purity. So it was only there to determine, is it safe, and is what's in this bottle exactly what's written on the label? It didn't get into efficacy. The pharmaceutical industry was the one that said, get into efficacy, because that's what made it impossible for any supplement to ever be able to say anything. We'll be the only ones that can afford a randomized controlled trial for $100 million. The FDA will sign off and say, well, now it can do blah, 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 and that's where this industry, the supplement industry, lost control of the entire world. Imagine if you went back to a place where safety is all that you have to prove. Prove that your product is safe. Vitamins are safe. And then let's let the market decide if it's efficacious or not. Now the drug company will be on the same playing field as you, saying, we believe our product does this, and your practitioners get to decide if it does. And you'll go to the practitioners that are having success instead of letting the pharmaceutical industry dictate what you're allowed to hear and what you're not allowed to hear. That is a future where we see a huge change that could happen for the supplement industry.
He is so right on, and I do want to say, just to double click on what Del said, there is a desire from what I'm seeing for deregulation in the FDA approval pathways. Right now, Big Pharma's made it that it's billions of dollars to get any type of therapeutic through. So being able to prove supplementation through FDA regulatory pathways to eventually get actual insurance reimbursement would be, I think, a goal of the administration of Marty McCary. But it's all about informed consent, transparency, and then getting medical dollars to the most efficacious treatment, which we've been gaslighting in this country to think is only a synthetic pill made by Pfizer and not core vitamins and supplementation.
We could have had an hour discussion with each of these panelists, and we are out of time. I am going to ask another question. I'm interested in the audience here. It felt like this was going to be potentially a controversial panel, and I'm hearing a lot of applause. I'm hearing a lot of support.
Some people are really.
My concern as I hear that and see a bunch of empty seats is who's not here? Who's not in the room? It seems like we're sort of,
We were 30 minutes late. Just saying, we got a big expo over there. I don't know. I mean, we're 30 minutes late.
And so it's interesting. And I started here with you, Vonnie, and maybe I'll just open it just quickly. What is the mechanism for making this? I know you probably feel like you've already answered this, but how do we make it? We've got people in here screaming like in support, and people out there saying, I don't even want to be in the room. Perhaps I don't know what's on their minds, but how does this become just an opportunity to move this message forward and not a political one? Just any final words?
I think results. I mean, in the end, all that any of us can do is deliver results. Maha.io, which is a website that we're launching now, I want to build an ecosystem for all of natural health and holistic health. I want to be able to find those functional medicine doctors, those holistic doctors that are finding ways to help you be healthy, be healthier, the fitness instructors, nutritionists. There is plenty of the hospital system. Every one of us can find a doctor that'll drug us. But how do we find that system that's actually going to lead us on a path to actual health? So Maha will be driving that. And we'll be working with the administration as far as it is with RFK Jr. to try and get, as much freedom to move into a holistic direction in this country. But we shouldn't be waiting for the government. We should never expect the government to fix it. Health should be in our hands. It's been taken out of our hands. It's being run by the pharmaceutical industry that has totally corrupted our government, our regulatory agencies. But if we're going to take it back in our hands, we're the ones that are going to have to say, hey, if you want health, forget about what the politics are around it. What is the best procedure? Who are the healthiest people here? And if it ends up being the Republican states that have more freedoms around their supplements and more freedoms and are maybe getting insurance carriers to, cover things that Democratic states aren't, then we're going to see that difference. You're going to start seeing a divide. And what's crazy to me, it blows my mind that I'm going to watch the Republicans carry the supplement industry and the holistic health industry and the chiropractors and the acupuncturists into the promised land, while the Democrats, as you've pointed out, sat on their hands every time we talk about natural health. I think slowly but surely, this room will be filling up as people recognize, wait a minute, am I not going to stand with the people that are fighting for me, and the industry that's, and the government that's fighting for me? I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. I care about winning. That's all I've ever cared about. And I think that's why, former Democrat, I don't know if you're where you're at. I don't know what I am. I'm politically marooned. I'm marooned, Right now, all I know is we've got Robert Kennedy Jr., who I doubt would call himself a Republican, running our regulatory agencies. The same guy that cleaned up our environment, something we used to celebrate. Let's just put the partisanship aside. It's going to take every one of us talking to each other. It's opening up a dialogue. Turn off MSNBC, turn off CNN, turn off Fox, turn off the thing that's dividing us, and let's start talking to each other. That's how we get around this.
Thank you, Doug. Go ahead.
This has literally been the best thing for this country, actually, getting Republicans on board. Because I feel like I'm living in the twilight zone, being asked to be on Sean Hannity on Fox News and talking about glyphosate and Roundup. Not in a million years could I have put that on my bingo card, okay? We have an opportunity like no other to bring everyone together on these issues and teach people what's been done to our food system and how to undo it, and to support natural and organic brands. It's the reason why I started my organic brand, Truvani, because I was sick of all the additives that were in protein powder. I was sick of all the bars out there that had natural flavors and other ingredients that I know many of the people in this room use, but we don't use those ingredients because they trick your brain. And so it's an opportunity where we're fighting back against the companies that are now re-engineering their food to avoid the Ozempic issue, right? They're actually finding different ways to circumpath Ozempic and still create an addictive flavor in a product. We're fighting back against that. We're fighting back against the food industry that wants to continue profits over people. And we're putting people before profits. We're putting health before profits. And we see that in our bottom lines every single day when we choose to pick an organic, natural ingredient versus another one. So this is an opportunity, again, to bring the entire country together. And it's amazing for the country, is what I think.
Thank you, Bonnie. And do you have a quick answer for us, Kelly?
I'd say one thing to kind of answer your question about the divide is that, this is a company of leading natural businesses. And let's just look at it from a raw perspective as leaders of businesses in the room. There is a true cultural bipartisan moment, aside from politics, where people on the left and right, where Berkeley hippies and Sean Hannity are waking up to the toxins in our food and the need to put root cause health at the center of healthcare. We have a person in charge at the HHS and a president who is adding voice to that message and power to that message. And I just can't express this enough. And our company, TrueMed, is working with a lot of companies in here, and something I'm really proud to be doing, and I think every company should really think about doing. I've seen it be so successful, is you don't need to get partisan, you don't need to say even Maha, but channeling your customers as advocates and channeling your own companies to engage. I've gone to DC and engaged with people in this room and other leaders of companies, and senators really need to hear this. We need to keep this drumbeat up. Aside from the partisanship, we need to marshal our customers to call senators, which really matters. The fact that Bobby got in against all the opposition from the most powerful industries in the country was because of calls. We can keep this momentum going. And at the end of the day, the North Star of this movement is benefiting businesses in this room. It is incentivizing less toxic food. It is incentivizing potentially more root cause supplementation over drugs. It's creating more research. Jay Bhattacharya yesterday gave great testimony about this. He said the number one goal of the NIH, the number one goal is to study root causes of why people are getting sick and interventions that are actionable for that. It's more research to underlie what you guys are doing. There's a true moment here, and whether you're engaging in a partisanship or not, marshaling your companies, speaking out, educating members of Congress, local lawmakers, as Dell's group is doing so well, there's a real opportunity here. So we're all, I think, all just here, to help in any way, and we're working with a lot of companies to just marshal voices. Let's add to this bipartisan movement. And again, my goal is that in 2028, the Democrat and the Republican are arguing who's more Maha. And I think we're on the verge of that happening.
I just want to very quickly say, I was with Robert Kennedy Jr. when he finally made that decision to join President Trump. It was one of the most difficult decisions I've watched anyone have to make, to walk away from a party that his family has represented, has branded his entire life. He is not a Republican. He walked across that aisle and he said it when he stepped down from the independent campaign. He said, we have to love our children more than we hate each other. That is the message everyone at this conference has to start thinking about. Are we going to put our divide aside?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vonnie. Thank you, Del. Thank you, Callie. Callie will be keynote speaker at NBJ Summit in July, so we're excited about that. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for staying, and thank you for coming to Expo.
Thank you.